On today's show, the Padres might not have the biggest budget as they used to, but there are still some really interesting free agents upcoming from this class, and we're going to talk about the ones that the Padres might want to look into.
You are Locked On Padres, your daily San Diego Padres podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another edition of Locked On Padres podcast, which is part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day for Friday, October 31st. Happy Fun Friday, and especially happy Halloween. Woo! As always, I'm your host with sometimes the most, Javier Reyes, and I've covered this team for 6 years now, not just for this podcast, but various other outlets, including justbaseball.com, chief among them. Today's episode, guys, is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Download the FanDuel app today. And today's episode, guys, we're doing the first of what will be many free agency talks, right? We're going to do a little bit of a free agency primer, not diving as deep necessarily, not finalized who I think the Padres should be going after, but I want to talk about the free agency class, talk about why this might be an underrated free agency class, I think, in a lot of ways. There are some really solid players here that the Padres could go after, and I also think we're going to talk about just the main people that stick out. And we're going to be basing this on Jim Bowden's latest article for The Athletic. If you want to read the thing in full, go check it out. His top 50 MLB free agents for 2025, 2026, and some contract predictions. So let's get into it, guys. Look, first of all, I just want to say that this isn't going to be as in-depth necessarily, right? I will be saving some of the more in-depth free agency profiles for individual players that I really want the Padres to go after, and especially my official kind of list of Padres to go after. This is just what kind of stands out, right? And it's tricky this time, right? Because as we've talked about before, we don't know exactly. Everybody listened to the episode on Tuesday. We don't know exactly what's going to happen when it comes to the Padres spending, right? Is there going to be a little bit more available than we think? Because we thought there was going to be nothing last year, and they ended up getting out and getting Nick Pivetta, right? Sure, his salary was like $1 million this past year, but even still, like, they got creative with another playoff berth, with them breaking attendance records again, with a lot of momentum, and San Diego, like Padre land, becoming a little bit more of a destination, a topic of national conversation. Will ownership be like, okay, maybe we'll be a little bit more giving, especially because there's so much money that's on these long contracts that, like, they kind of have no choice almost, I would think, than to compete now. It would look really bad if you just have all these high paid players and did nothing else for years until they ran out their contracts, right? So we'll have to see how it shakes out. And another big thing about this is that, you know, with Yu Darvish, that's why I talked about him on Tuesday, that if he were to retire, does that free up some money for the team potentially to use? You know, you're probably losing Robert Suarez at free agency as well. So there's going to be at least some money, I think, left over potentially for the Padres. But let's talk about just the general state of the free agency class, right? So I think it's a pretty good one. I think all things considered, right? It doesn't have, I think, the 2023 levels of, oh my God, this is stacked, but there's a lot of really interesting free agents. Once you get to, like, the fact that what's his face, Gleyber Torres, right, who had a pretty decent season this year with the Tigers, being an on-base machine. The fact that he's ranked the 21st free agent by Jim Bowden just gives you an idea, right? The fact that Tyler Mahle is 30th, right? The fact that we've got guys like Luke Weaver, Devin Williams out in the 30 range, right? Like, there's still definitely some value in some guys that could help at this Padres team. And it's always important to note, and I love bringing this up every time I get the chance, that the best year that the Padres have had under AJ Preller was a year in which he traded Juan Soto for a bunch of depth pieces. Sure, right? He basically traded ostensibly for Dylan Cease too, but Michael King, Higashioka's great, and signing Donovan Solano and Jurickson Profar, that ended up being the best season, right? The Padres have stars, so the important part right now is not necessarily going after Kyle Tucker. In terms of what I think the immediate needs for the Padres are, I think it's definitely some back-end starting pitching with upside is definitely what they'll be looking for. I don't think that they have necessarily the budget, right? I don't think that they have the clear check, whatever the terminology is, in their price range to go after one of those big guys like a Framber Valdez, right? Who's going to be available, like a Dylan Cease, who's going to be available this offseason, right? So I don't think that's necessarily in their future, but there's still a lot of guys. But I think a starting pitcher who can be a back end guy that can fill up innings with upside is going to be big, right? The next thing I would say is catcher. Right? Are they going to go fully in with Freddie Fermin? I've talked a lot on this show about how I think there's a slight possibility that Ethan Salas could come up later this year, depending on what they do in free agency, depending on if they get another sort of decent backup catcher, right? It's Freddie Fermin for now. Do they just want to sign someone in the Elias Diaz tier? Sure. But there's also the potential of them going out and getting a little bit better quality from the catcher and just having a nice tandem. That way we can give Ethan Salas some more time. The reason why I think he could debut if they don't address catcher is because, from what I understand, his defensive skills are truly, truly great. And yeah, the bat might not be there. Some may say it might never be there, but he's super young and catchers develop in a weird way. And I've heard comps to Gabriel Moreno of the Arizona Diamondbacks. And if Ethan Salas turns out to be Gabriel Moreno, that is a huge, huge piece for this Padres team. But again, I could see a world in which the Padres rush their prospects, because they tend to do that a lot, right? And they say, you know what, at least Ethan Salas is going to be really good behind the plate. I could see that happening. I don't want it to happen, but I could see it, right? So catching is something else to keep an eye on. First base is another position. And I think that it all depends, because there is a world in which they move Gavin Sheets and just have him play first base, right? Probably the worst defender on the roster right now, currently for next year. And I think that they would say, you know what, let's just put him at first base. I don't know if I would be a fan of that necessarily, because he succeeded so much as a DH this year and occasionally in the outfield and left field when they needed him to, that I don't want to break the thing that maybe him focusing just entirely on batting helped him out this year to be a solid contributor for this team. And then DH, same thing, right? If they move him to first base, then all of a sudden it's like, okay, they need a new DH. Can they go out and get someone who could just be a solid bat, and vice versa, right? So that's a position to look out for. And then lastly, it's not a need, but don't sleep on the Padres maybe sneaking a reliever in there. A cheap one. No one big. But I could see a world in which maybe they lose Suarez, and if they're really going to turn Mason Miller into a starting pitcher, I could see them saying, let's get like one solid guy, maybe a Luke Weaver type of player, right? Maybe someone who's just okay, that could give them some innings, give them some decent bullpen depth, so they're not relying entirely on some of the more unproven commodities, right? Like, is David Morgan going to be good as next year? I think he can be. Is I'm blanking out some of the other bullpen. Marinaccio going to be good next year, right? There's some other question marks. If you lose Suarez and ostensibly lose Mason Miller to being a starting pitcher, that affects things. So don't sleep on the possibility of them adding a little bit of a reliever. And that's basically it. Those are the overall things for this class. And I think that the class itself has so many good players. I'm just excited. I'm always excited with free agency. I just love seeing where guys go, because I think in baseball, you know, it's just fun seeing like what little players everybody acquires, where everybody ends up, who's going to be the big paid guy, right? It's just a lot of fun. And I think that while it does usually take way too long, don't sleep on guys. Last thing I'll say about this free agency thing. Remember when we had that period in 2023 before that season, right? Remember the lockout and that whole thing? And remember how we got, I think it was 2023 or 2022. I can't remember right now, but do you remember when the lockout, I think it was actually heading into 22. Do you remember when the lockout, because of the upcoming lockout, teams were signing free agents like that? Like, it was like 4 in a day, big ones. And then the lockout came and then they signed some more. There's the potential for a lockout upcoming with CBA negotiations. So don't be super surprised if we get a really lit December, right? So you might hear about a lot of these things soon. Just a thing to keep an eye on, because I do think there's going to be a lockout of some sorts. And based on how the players have been talking, based on if you read between the lines and the tea leaves, it doesn't look like they're going to be so friendly. It's not going to be an easy negotiation, which might be the product of them not necessarily fully figuring out what they wanted the last time and kind of, I don't want to say settling necessarily. I'm not super in tune with what every player is going through, but for what the deal they took, that might be a part of it, right? So we'll have to see how it all shakes out. But one thing is for sure is that free agency is always an interesting time. Even if the Padres are a little bit low on their budget, we know AJ Preller's got something cooking, guys. We just absolutely know it. But before we talk about some of the things that from this free agency class, some of the guys to look out for, and just the top, like what we've got going and whatnot, I got to talk to you guys really quickly about our friends over at Prize Picks. You know what I love about Prize Picks? You know what I love oh so much? You know what I love? It's simple, right? You and I make decisions every day, but on Prize Picks, those decisions can get you paid, and whether it's NFL, NBA, or both, or whatever you want to look for, there's no better time to jump in on the action. And all you have to do is pick more or less on at least 2 player stats, and if you get them right, you win. It takes less than 60 seconds to make your lineup, and you can play anywhere PrizePicks operates, including California, Texas, and Georgia. It's great, guys. It's great. You could also do the stacks feature. So if you're just like, I'm going all in on Josh Allen, touchdowns, yards, rushing yards, whatever, you can do that too as one player in your lineup. It's really, really great in the same thing. Plus, as well, nice little thing, if one of your players leaves early with an injury, it's not going to count against you. There's an injury reboot feature that saves your lineup from a loss. So download the PrizePicks app today and use code LOCKEDONMLB to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONMLB for $50 in lineups after your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks. It's oh so good to be right. And just like that, everybody, we are back here on the Locked On Padres podcast, thriving and vibing despite it all. Let's talk some free agents. Let's talk about like the upper tier first. I just want to tell everybody, these are likely players that are outside the free agency class, right? So for one thing, Kyle Tucker, the number one free agent of this offseason, he's expected to get, according to Jim Bowden, 10 years, $427 million. That's the type of contract that he's looking for. And he's kind of the most auraless star in the league, right? So, like, I think there's a lot of fans who maybe just listen to this show who aren't fully familiar with Kyle Tucker. Like, they might know he's good, and he's really, really good. He fell off a little bit in the second half, so I can actually see a little bit of trepidation by some teams, but overall, he's going to be the biggest free agent, and I actually think that it's going to be interesting to see where he ends up. I can't wait for him to just end up being a Dodger, right? Which is going to be great. And I can't wait for media to tell everybody, this is fine, actually. Everybody, it's good for baseball that your teams don't have fun and you do nothing. Let's just celebrate how amazing the Dodgers are, right? So that's what could potentially happen. But that's one. Kyle Schwarber, I'm probably going to get some comments from people that are saying Kyle Schwarber would be perfect for this team, and he would be, right? If you moved Gavin Sheets to first base, Kyle Schwarber should be a DH. He is a very bad defensive player, but good God almighty, is he really, really good. I mean, this guy hits for absolute bombs. He would be great, right? It would fix the Padres' power issue. And again, I want to remind everyone, this is why you don't always just say, let's go out and sign the biggest free agents, because let's say you don't sign Xander Bogaerts. Let's say you don't do some of these contracts. Maybe a player like Kyle Schwarber is actually someone that they could go for, right? I mean, he was just unbelievable. How many home runs did he hit this year? Let me check. I actually don't have it in front of me. He hit 56 home runs this year, man. I mean, it's just insane. But at the age of 32, and with a lot of his game predicated on power, I could see a world in which some people might be nervous for players like this, especially in baseball when guys fall off, but it should be interesting. He's predicted to get 5 years, 160. Pete Alonso, another player that has been talked about on this podcast before. He's projected 6 years, 182 at 31 years old. He's one of the best power hitters in the league in terms of just being super duper consistent, good on base skills. He's great. But I honestly feel like the Mets are going to be a team going after him. I do not see 6 years, 182 being in the Padres' future. Framber Valdez, the top overall free agent in terms of starting pitching, which is, I know that a lot of people might be like, what? Really? Framber Valdez? Is he that good? Yeah, he really is that good. He was not as dominant as previous years, but he was still really, really good this year. 3.66 ERA, a FIP of 3.37, and he hasn't had an ERA above. This was his highest ERA since, let's see here. This is his highest ERA since 2020. Just to give you guys an idea, like, he is just so steady, and you want that out of a starting pitcher. He is going to get paid. But again, as much as the Padres need starting pitching, I don't think that's a guy for them that they can afford. 6 years, 190 predicted by Jim Bowden. Bo Bichette, shortstop, obviously not someone for the Padres, and he's projected a lot of money. 7 years, 189. He had a down year in 24, but he jumped right back this year, and he's been great, although I think he's out right now. Alex Bregman with an opt-out. I'm going to be real with you guys. I had a dream the Padres signed Alex Bregman, which, look, I don't really know what dreams are. I'm going to be honest with y'all. Not to get into, like, conversations of faith and what you think about the world and the universe, but, like, I am so can't make up my minds, because a moment like last 2 nights ago, actually, when I had this dream, it's like, maybe dreams don't mean anything, because there's no way in heck Alex Bregman makes sense for the Padres. At third base, they have Manny Machado. He's projected 6 years, 182. The only way this would possibly happen is if they had more money to spend, if they shock the world and they move him to second base. But we already have Jake Cronenworth, so you're putting Jake Cronenworth back at first. It just doesn't make a lot of sense not seeing it. But can't wait to see where he goes. Ranger Suarez, another top-tier pitcher, 6 years, 164, out of the Padres' price range. Dylan Cease, interestingly, he still thinks, Jim Bowden, that he's getting 6 years, 187. I would not be shocked if Dylan Cease gets one of those, I've said this before, a 3-year 75 opt out after each year because he's a Boris type of player. He lost himself some money this year, but 6 years 187 is not bad. I could see him taking that. It all depends, and teams might just say, like, if you're, and he says he puts here, Padres as one of the fits, right? Which obviously I don't think that they can afford this, but Braves, Mets, Orioles, Cubs, Giants, Angels, Red Sox, Tigers. I think if you're Mets, if you're Braves, if you're Cubs, if your teams that are a little bit more established and can take a risk, I think Dylan Cease is going to be a big time guy for all the reasons that we talked about last week in the player review for Dylan Cease. So go check that out. Tatsuya Imai, I think is how you say his last name. Japanese player, 7 years, 154 projected. By Jim Bowden. I don't know much about him, admittedly. I'm going to have to talk to my prospect people. But not going to be a cheap guy, international free agent wise, right? Like, it's not going to be easy. He's represented by Scott Boras. Cody Bellinger, projected 6 years, 168. This is why, like, I remember the offseason when he was a free agent. I actually said that I wouldn't mind taking a shot on him just because why not? He wasn't going to cost too much. The Cubs did it, right? Ended up being good. Then they gave him an extension. And then they traded him for nothing, by the way. A lot of people don't remember that. Cody Bellinger fell off a little bit in 2024, but that wasn't reason to give him up for nothing with that contract, right? And instead, he's going to get paid even more now. So a little bit of an L by the Cubs. Zach Gallen is ranked a little bit high. 5 years, 135. Don't see that. Munetaka Murakami, another player from Japan. I assume he's going to the Dodgers. That's the way I feel about all these guys. Michael King, he writes about very interestingly, as another one of those guys, ranked number 13th on free agents. So if you guys are hoping that maybe he could fly under the radar, he might not. But Jim Bowden writes here, very importantly, right? He says, however, he was placed on the IL on May 25th with a pinched thoracic nerve. And when he returned on August 9th, he threw only 17 2/3 over the remainder of the regular season and only 1 inning in the postseason, striking out 3 of the 4 batters he faced. His medicals will determine the type of contract he gets this offseason. And it is difficult to predict his contract without seeing those records. With that caveat, and taking into account the potential injury risk, I predict he'll land a similar contract to what Nate Eovaldi got from the Rangers and Sonny Gray got from the Cardinals, even though King is considerably younger than both. That said, if the medicals are completely clear, I could see him getting a 5-year deal in the $140 million range. I've talked about this a lot. What is going on with him? I still have not gotten an answer for you being brought back off the IL, showing that you're pitching as a starting pitcher, and in a do-or-die game, they only use you for 1 inning, especially when the rest of the bullpen was taxed. I'm just wondering, is Michael King a little bit more hurt than he is? And that might determine whether or not the Padres can afford him and whatnot. I'm really curious to see how that goes. Edwin Diaz, he has an opt-out. I don't know if he'll opt out. We'll see how that goes, because he might love the what's his face? What are they called? The Mets, right? We'll see how that goes. They love him over there. And then last of what I would call the elite group of free agents, right? Because this is the last of the guys who are at the top tier of their position. Robert Suarez at 15. He has an opt-out. Projected to get 4 years, $80 million. I think they're going to let him go. I wouldn't mind it either for the Padres, because I just think that the bullpen, they can... I just don't like paying relievers a ton of money. I just don't. It scares me every time when you pay them this much. And I know that some have come through. Edwin Diaz got paid a lot, and he's been pretty good for them. Although he did miss that one entire season after the World Baseball Classic mishap. But to me, Robert Suarez, he showed some worrying signs a little bit at points this year. He's a little bit older, low-key. Very quietly, he's 34 years old. Not that he can't be good again, but for me, I just don't like that he doesn't get as many swings and misses, and he can give up some hard contact. I don't mind if they move on from Suarez and say, you know what, that's just a little bit too much for us right now. But shout out AJ Preller, by the way. He found Robert Suarez. No one wants to give Preller credit, right? National media only wants to give the Dodgers credit for their building and team building and all that stuff, right? But when it comes to AJ Preller, remember that nobody knew who he was, kind of. Signing this guy as a rookie, like 30 years old from the KB. Guess what? He ended up being really, really good, right? And a really, really solid relief pitcher, and at times an amazing relief pitcher. So shout out to him. But that is it in terms of the top tier free agents, I think, of this class. And I'm really excited. Like, again, those aren't scrubs. I know that Kyle Tucker, I know there's no Juan Soto, there's no Shohei Ohtani, there's no, like, it's not like it's 20 players deep. But I'm just telling you guys, I need to emphasize with you guys, if you take away one thing from today's Locked On Padres episode, it is the Padres are in a position where there are some free agents that you can get for cheap that I'm going to talk about that could absolutely help this team build out the edges and just have some decent depth. Remember that feeling after the trade deadline, how much Ryan O'Hearn and Ramon Laureano did for this team, and Freddie Fermin as well? those aren't top level stars, right? Those are the type of players that any team can afford, which is why the lack of spending from other teams is so frustrating, right? But keep that in mind, how dynamic their offense looked after that time, how great they were in 2024. Back end depth players absolutely can help this team win and be a contender and just get them in the dance, right? That's absolutely something that could happen. And I want to talk about some of those bargain bin players that stuck out to me initially, right? I haven't delved deep into the stats on all these guys necessarily, but this is just a little bit of a preview of some guys that I think the Padres should absolutely be targeting this offseason. But guys, let me tell you about FanDuel real quick before we get into that. We love FanDuel here. One of the official sponsors of this podcast, I should say. And with the NBA back, there's no better place to get in on the action than FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Even if you missed the start of the game or want to ride the hot hand, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who will score next to fourth quarter comebacks. Plus, you can even combine your live bets into a same game parlay for a shot at a bigger payout. It keeps every game exciting, especially when your team's making that late push. And right now, FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. Heck of an offer, my goodness. So head to FanDuel.com to sign up and play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. And just like that, everybody, we are winding down this Locked On Padres podcast. Well, not winding down. We're in the waiting moments, I should say, of this here Locked On Padres podcast. Remember, everybody, to check out the show wherever you get your podcasts from and subscribe on the YouTube. And when you do, leave comments in the comment section below, and I will answer them on the Monday Mailbag Pod about whatever you want. You want to ask me about free agents? Go for it. You want to submit some free agent ideas? Go for it. You want to talk about Stitch? Go for it. You want to talk about one battle after another? You want to talk about the World Series? Whatever you want. I'd love to hear from you guys. And even if it's a troll, I love responding to trolls too. So let's now talk about some immediate players that stuck out to me when it comes to this upcoming free agency class, right? In terms of the top 50 that our guy Jim Bowden talked about. And again, these are just guys that stuck out initially, not necessarily players that I've dug deep into, right? I haven't looked too deep into some of these guys, but nonetheless, I do think that these are players that for sure, at least I'm pretty certain the Padres could potentially go after and afford. Absolutely. So let's talk about him. First up, we got the boy, Michael King. I already talked about him, obviously. And as I noted before, depends on how his medicals go. But if we're looking at an offseason in which he maybe doesn't get paid as much, that would make you nervous in the sense that if he's not going to get that much and teams are worried about the medicals, do you still want the Padres to re-sign him? Again, it's such a wild card, but 3 years, 75 for any pitcher, frankly, I do think is something that the Padres could maybe convince ownership and be like, hey, it's only going to be for 3 years. Or maybe they sign Michael King to a 3 year 75 with opt-outs after each year, right? Maybe he wants to prove it first and then go get his 6 year 180, right? He could potentially make more next summer if I think teams just see one more good solid season of him looking healthy and looking great. And he is phenomenal. So that's one to keep an eye on. Some others that jumped out to me. Merrill Kelly predicted 2 years, $30 million. Merrill Kelly is old, right? So that's the first red flag. Right? But Merrill Kelly has just been the definition of a little bit of an innings eater, solid pitcher guy, right? He was actually pretty good for the Diamondbacks there. It was actually one of their only reliable pitchers. Since 2021, his ERA, the highest ERA he's had was actually 4.44 in 2020. Or 2021, I'm sorry. Then after that, 3.37, 3.29, 4.03, and then this year, 2025, one of his better seasons in a while, 3.52. He doesn't walk too many batters. He doesn't give up the biggest home runs in the world. He's just the definition of solid. And I think getting that guy at the back end of your bullpen, or back end of your rotation, 37 years old, a 2 year deal, you could do worse, man. That's just going to help give the Padres depth in their rotation and make it so that they maybe don't have to necessarily force Mason Miller to leave, right? If it ain't go broke, don't fix it, right? It makes just the starting pitching room a lot clearer. Think about it, right? Let's take those numbers that I just showed you and then add that to a rotation of Nick Pivetta, Joe Musgrove, Yu Darvish, Mason Miller, Merrill Kelly. Not the worst in the world, dude. It's not the worst in the world at all, depending on how things shake out. So he definitely is bargain bin hunting a decent player. Next, JT Realmuto predicted 2 years, $34 million by Jim Bowden. This one's tricky because while yes, that's not a lot of money, it is the top catcher probably available, and he has been declining for a few years now. But again, it all depends. I talked about it in the first segment. what exactly are the Padres going to do? Do they feel comfortable with just having some whatever as their backup and running Freddie Fermin as their primary catcher? They could. I think Ferminas has some decent upside, right? So I don't think that this is necessarily a contract that they have to go out and go for. I think that they could probably go real bargain, just do another Elias Diaz type of thing, and just be like, Fermin's the starter. Let's just keep hoping on Ethan Salas. But it also depends on how Ethan Salas is doing, right? If Ethan Salas is not looking good behind the scenes and teams evaluators are like, you know what, we might want to trade this guy. If they trade him or if they just know he's not ready, then maybe a Real Muto as your primary catcher, even though he is kind of approaching the end of his prime. Not even approaching the end of his prime, past his prime, right? He was the Phillies backstop for a while, but overall, he could still play some pretty good defense. He could still be solid. He was 2.1 wins above replacement. Making that guy your primary catcher is not the worst thing I've ever heard in the world, right? And then having Freddie Fermin as your backup, not bad, especially with his declines. I think the Padres could potentially, what's his face? Yeah, the Padres could potentially go for that because of the decline. Wouldn't be the worst idea in the world. Some other guys that stand out to me, Tyler Mahle, predicted 1 year, $17 million. I think this is one of my favorite deals in the league right now. I really do. Tyler Mahle was really good for the Rangers this year. Now, he missed a lot of time, right? That's been his whole thing, is injury, which is why he's not going to get paid a lot. But he's 30 years old, right? 31 years old, actually. That's not too old. And he produced, in the 86 innings that he did this year, a 2.18 ERA. Now, don't get me wrong. With that comes a FIP of 3.37, an expected ERA of 4.35 because he walked a lot of batters, didn't get as many strikeouts, and his home run and fly ball rate was obscenely low. So he's probably not a 2.18 ERA guy. But before that, he was a 3.16 ERA guy before. He's been okay. 1 year deal for a guy like this at 31 years old with some upside. Who knows what Ruben Niebla could do? Right? We saw what he did with Nick Pivetta this year. I like it as a back-end guy with at least okay upside. Next one, Marcell Ozuna, predicted 1 year, $12 million. Because he's a DH, right? He's never going to be that guy that gets paid a lot of money. Only the Yordan Alvarez types get paid that much. And I understand that he wasn't very good this year. Actually, he was quite bad this year. 232, 355, 400 slash line, 1.2 wins above replacement, 114 WRC plus. But, and there's a big but here. His overall numbers were good. His weighted on base was 334, and his expected was 362, right? With 21 home runs, he started showing more signs of life in the second half of the season, power-wise. So what I'm saying is basically this. If they want to move Gavin Sheets to first base, if they want to use him in a different way, and you want to have Ozuna come in and give you a true power DH, who could also walk, by the way, if that also fits the Padres' philosophy. They've been really wanting guys that get on base a lot. I think he could be good, and I just don't think that he's going to cost too much. As a DH, there are much, much, much worse options to go. Two more guys left I want to talk about. Paul Goldschmidt, a little bit of a similar thing. Depends on what they want to do, right? Do they want to go after Ryan O'Hearn? 2 years, $24 million. Paul Goldschmidt, 1 year, $10 million predicted for both of these guys. Bargain bin hunting, baby. If you just get a solid first baseman there, I don't think you guys understand that, like, Goldschmidt, even at this stage of his career, is probably a better player than Luis Suarez was, and Ryan O'Hearn certainly was that, right? If you want to do that, you have second base, you still have your DH free. It's just, it fixes a little bit of a problem, right? The only thing with Goldschmidt would be that there's not much power there anymore, so I'd probably prefer the Mahle or Ozuna route, but it's still a guy to talk about, and it would be exciting. It would be a potential, he's a vet, and he's a fringe Hall of Fame player, so I would not mind that for this Padres team. However, they do need power, which is why I prioritize guys like O'Hearn, Ozuna. I just think, even if it's a guy who doesn't get on base, even if Ozuna's, like, plate discipline skills fall off a little bit as he gets older, if he hits, like, 28 home runs for the team, I'll take that. Again, power is absolutely what the Padres need. Last free agent I want to talk about is Brandon Woodruff, predicted by Jim Bowden to get a 2 year, $22 million deal. Only thing about this guy, I actually think there might be too many teams that are going to be interested in him because of the fact that he got hurt late and they know when he's healthy, he's awesome. And if he's going to cost that little, a lot of teams are going to be interested in him. Like, a lot of teams. As he writes, Woodruff missed all of the 2024 season and part of this year after undergoing shoulder surgery in October 2023. He made his 2025 debut in July and became a legitimate contender for Comeback Player of the Year. with 12 strong starts, 3.2 ERA, 0.912 whip. However, a right lateral strain in late September forced him to miss the playoffs. Obviously, the medical risk assessment will determine what type of offers he could get in free agency, but if healthy, he could be one of the best value signings in free agency, and he predicts 2 years, $22 million. Guys, if that's what he's going for, this team should be giving him more than that. I would absolutely take the risk on a guy like Brandon Woodruff, who's been amazing before. And if teams are scared off a little bit, I understand. But, and I understand if you're scared off as a listener saying, I don't want damaged goods. But in the position that the Padres are in, that guy just really stuck out to me, right? Absolutely. Adrian Hauser even sticks out to me, right? Decent, he could just fill out innings. There are going to be guys that the Padres sign this offseason for sure. But someone like Woodruff, someone like Ozuna, someone like a JT Realmuto, like all the guys that I've mentioned, absolutely can keep this team in contention and make up for the fact that they lost so much of their farm system, that they have a lot of weird contracts on this team. And I think those are in their price range. I think. That's what I'm going with for right now on this lovely, fun Friday, spooky Halloween spectacular. I was not wearing a costume for my podcast today. It didn't ship yet at the time of my recording this, but I wanted to. And for those who don't know, go watch, if you've ever heard of Porco Rosso, that's what I'm being for Halloween. So that's it, guys, for my initial free agency primer. We're going to talk a lot about this next week, too. I'm going to dive deeper into some more free agents and give my official free agent kind of wish list as we get through the offseason, right? And then, of course, leave some comments in the comment section below for Monday's mailbag episode. Maybe we'll even hear about a new signing. Maybe we'll hear about a new manager rumor. Maybe Albert Pujols is going to be announced. We'll have to see how that goes. Tuesday's episode will then be the Padres bullpen year in review. That's going to be a lot of fun. Not a player, not specific one player, right? We're going to talk about the whole bullpen, and that's going to be a lot of fun with some other crossovers potentially in the works as well. So I hope you all enjoy your Halloween weekend, and hopefully at the time of this podcast, when you're watching this, maybe the Dodgers somehow lost. I doubt it. Highly doubt it. But nonetheless, until next time, stay safe, and of course, stay faithful. My Friday Faithful homies, take care.